The government to launch the next round of political reform consultation in the new year. Police to clear Causeway Bay protest site on Monday morning. And deadly landslide hits central Java in Indonesia.
Good evening. The second round of public consultation on political reform will probably not be launched until early next year. Despite the delay, the government says it will try to lobby pan-democratic lawmakers for support. Ronnie Samtani has more.
The second round of public consultation will only be 2 months long compared with 5 months in the first round. And it was due to start in the fourth quarter of 2014. But now it's unlikely to be launched before the end of the year. Secretary for Constitutional and Mainland Affairs Raymond Tam said the government had originally planned to announce the consultation exercise at the Legislative Council. But because there is only one full council meeting left before the Christmas break, Tam said the administration will likely start the consultation in January. There are 5 council meetings next month. The 14th and 15th are reserved for the chief executive's policy address and question and answer session. That means the government will have to publish its consultation document on the 7th or at the end of the month. Pan-democratic lawmakers have vowed to veto any package based on the reform framework announced by the National People's Congress Standing Committee in August. Tam stressed that the government will continue to communicate with the Pan-Democrats to try to win their support. For example, Tam said they could consider lowering the nomination threshold so that more people can stand for election, including the Pan-Democrats. But Democratic Party Chairwoman Emily Lau is cool to the idea, saying you can let 20 people enter the race, but only a handful would actually be allowed to run. The government's reform package has to give the public a real choice, she said. Pan-Democratic lawmaker Kenneth Leung says he will not pocket a reform proposal that doesn't meet international standards of democracy.
I do not think that the 31st August decision by the Standing Committee of NPC meets that international standard.
Pro-establishment lawmakers said they hope there will be rational discussion during the next consultation.
I think to lower the requirement to enter the race is the idea of some. I'm sure the government will make a good balance, whether to keep it at 1/10 or 1/8 or lower it to 1/12. Right now, I think the most important thing is we express our views legally and sensibly.
And Chan Kam Lam of the Democratic Alliance for the Betterment and Progress of Hong Kong hopes the Pan-Democrats won't boycott the second round of consultation. Ronnie Samtani, TVB News.
The police have confirmed they will clear the Causeway Bay Occupy protest site on Monday morning. Officers again appeal to demonstrators to leave the area. In a media briefing today, police stressed that they are duty-bound to preserve public peace and protect public safety and order.
I need to point out that the assembly within the occupied area in Causeway Bay is unlawful. On the 15th of December, police will exercise legal powers as conferred by the law to remove the obstacles in the illegally occupied area on Yi Wall Street, Causeway Bay, so as to reopen that section of road.
Hui called on the public to avoid the area on Monday morning unless it's necessary.
During the operation, police will need to set up an operational cordon area and arrange temporary traffic diversion. Police will facilitate the access of those who work or live in the affected section of road.
He also warned occupiers to leave soon, saying they won't be given much time to pack up on Monday. But some demonstrators are insisting on staying.
I believe that in order to break the law, we also have to take the responsibility in order to show that we are under this civil disobedience, to show the discontent to the government and the police force.
Over in Mong Kok, more than 100 people again gathered on Sayong Choi Street South last night, claiming to be shopping. Police urged those who didn't want to take part in an illegal rally to leave immediately. But the shoppers, occasionally shouting slogans for genuine democracy, continued to roam the area. At one point, they began singing Christmas carols. Around midnight, the police set up a cordon to try and disperse them. 7 people were arrested. Today, a giant banner measuring 6 by 2 meters was found hung on Lion Rock Mountain. A banner calling for genuine universal suffrage was spotted here in October. This one called on Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying to step down. Authorities sent staff to take it down around noon. Another banner calling for genuine universal suffrage was hung atop Devil's Peak in Yaotong. This was also taken down by noon. Clashes between police and Occupy protesters have led to a huge rift between supporters of the pro-democracy movement and those backing the police. But a pan-democratic lawmaker who also sits on the Independent Police Complaints Council insists the watchdog can handle complaints fairly despite members' political leanings. During the Occupy movement in the past 2.5 months, more than 2,000 complaints against the police have been filed. But accounting sector lawmaker Kenneth Leung, a pan-democrat, acknowledged it's been hard on law enforcement too.
I think the police had a very difficult time, and I think the whole thing is actually a political issue, and it must have a political solution. Many of the police forces are very tired and very stressed. But, for example, the clearance on Thursday, I find it very peaceful and efficiently handled.
Leung is both a supporter of the movement and a member of the IPCC, which oversees investigations into complaints filed with the Complaints Against Police Office. But pointing out each complaint goes through a mechanism involving 6 members of the 24-strong council, he played down concerns about potential bias.
I do not think the political stance of an individual member would affect the impartiality of case handling, because we've been briefed how to tackle conflict of interest issue. Of course, but if you know somebody who is involved in the case, then you have to abstain from handling the case.
Leung believes the council is able to stay objective when it comes to sensitive issues, such as the level of force used against protesters.
We have full access to the guidelines of the police force, and we have had several discussions with the police, and of course we have discussions amongst ourselves as well. So we do think that we only have one objective criteria of assessing the kind of force to be applied, and I think we are confident that we can handle these complaints objectively.
President Xi Jinping and other central government leaders today attended the first state ceremony marking the anniversary of the Nanjing massacre. She said that denial of the massacre will not be allowed by the Chinese people or peace-loving people anywhere in the world. 16 honor guards laid 8 wreaths in memory of the victims, while the national flag flew at half-mast. Earlier this year, the National People's Congress Standing Committee designated December 13th as the National Memorial Day for Nanjing massacre victims. More than 300,000 people were killed as invading Japanese troops started the rampage on this day in 1937, lasting more than a month. Hong Kong also marked the 77th anniversary. Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying and other top officials attended a ceremony at the Hong Kong Museum of Coastal Defense in Sao Kay Wan.
Turning overseas, rescuers in Indonesia are using their bare hands to search for victims in the mud after a landslide wiped out a village in central Java. At least 17 people are dead and about 100 are missing. Hundreds of people have been evacuated. Nearby residents said they heard loud sounds like an explosion before the landslide rolled down the mountainside. Rescue efforts are being hampered by blocked roads and a lack of heavy equipment. Residents of Southern California are trying to pick up the pieces after a monster storm slammed the area with flash floods, mudslides and a tornado. Dramatic rescues were captured on video. The storm has been blamed for at least 3 deaths on the U.S. West Coast so far. Sonia Otero reports.
Dubbed the Pineapple Express, this storm packed a powerful punch. It had picked up vast amounts of moisture near the Hawaiian Islands before dumping it on the West Coast. Weather experts warn mudslides were imminent. That's what materialized in Camarillo Springs when a massive hillside came tumbling down.
Well, we're seeing the results of some debris and mud flow overnight that created a lot of issues here for this community.
There was no stopping the mounds of muddy muck from crashing through row after row of homes. Still, some were spared.
Oh, we just put sandbags up, 400 sandbags.
Wow, are we lucky.
Luckily, residents adhered to a mandatory evacuation, so no one was hurt. But many aren't out of the woods just yet.
If we continue the rain as it's going, we could lose the house in the next couple hours.
Not one, but two dramatic rescues were captured on camera. In two separate cases, the fire department came to the aid of two people who were swept away in the fast-moving Los Angeles River near a homeless encampment. Over in South Los Angeles, residents freaked out when a small tornado began wreaking havoc. It ripped off the roofs of an apartment complex and two houses, but no injuries were reported. This same storm pummeled the Pacific Northwest and the northern half of California earlier this week. Its lashing rains and hurricane-force winds caused widespread flooding and left tens of thousands of people in the dark. Sonia Artero, TVB News.
The pressure is on as United Nations talks on a new global warming pact continue this weekend in Peru. Negotiators from about 200 countries are haggling over national commitments ahead of a key climate summit in Paris next year. James Aiken reports.
Wherever climate change talks go, protests are sure to follow. The young activists who staged this Diane demonstration say they're already seeing the effects of global warming on their own communities.
You know, we say of young Australians these days that we don't know what green grass looks like because everything's just yellow and prickly and everyone gets sore feet when you run on it.
The annual climate meetings rarely end on time, and this two-week session is no exception, with familiar disputes continuing to linger.
We do need just to make a final effort. We do need to take political decision. We are almost there. There are no reason to stop this process. There are no reason to postpone our decision.
Negotiators are trying to decide what information should be included in the pledges that governments are supposed to put on the table for the Paris Climate Summit in 1 year. That means deciding which countries should bear the biggest burden in trying to keep parts of the planet from going underwater. The pledges are intended to be the building blocks of a global deal billed as a major step forward in reversing rising greenhouse gas emissions. Rich nations are resisting demands that they include promises of financing to help poor countries absorb the effects of climate change. Meanwhile, major developing countries like China oppose a review process of those pledges. But there has been some action. Peruvian President Ollanta Humala has just signed a new law to keep his country's glaciers from becoming another casualty of climate change.
Now, Peru, under his leadership, is doing something very important for humanity, for world sustainable development.
As the talks continue, so too do the demonstrations, like this one staged by Oxfam. Protesters say it's time to show political leadership and make decisions that are for the larger global good. James Aiken, TVB News.
Still ahead tonight in our broadcast, major air traffic disruption in London. Locally, ATV still hasn't paid its staff for November. And checking out the goodies at the Brands and Products Expo.
Framing an assassination attempt on President Heller is supposed to take place in London here today.
And the Americans had no idea that you were controlling the drone.
You probably think I'm at a disadvantage. I promise you I'm not.
Tuesday,